I want to make sure that I have everything correct. Okay, so good afternoon, ladies. And I will just say ladies right now because we have no gentlemen that have joined us. My name is Renee Escoffery-Torres, and I serve as Vice President of the Episcopal Church Women for the Diocese of Southern Virginia, representing approximately 30,000 Episcopalians in 101 parishes from the Eastern Shore to Danville. I am proud and honored this afternoon to bring this program, which is the second in a series of discussions as part of our ECW President's Program series, Dare to be Different. Let us unmask the mystery of autism spectrum disorder. Our guest speaker for today is Ann Flippen, the Executive Director of the Autism Society of Central Virginia. In her role, Ann oversees all operations of the ASCV, supporting both programs and development initiatives, and joined the ASCV in January of 2019 and has over 10 years of development and nonprofit management experience, serving in various roles at Autism Speaks and the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. Ann has a 30-year-old brother with autism and has experienced firsthand the challenges faced by individuals and families in the autism community. She is honored to lead a team with a mission to provide much-needed programs and support to our local autism community. Welcome, Ann, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. That was such a kind introduction. I really appreciate it. I'm so excited to join you all today and to share a little bit about autism, about our organization, and different resources and tools that you all can take back to your parishes to help you support your local autism community.
All right, so before we begin, I want to go over the format of this program with our audience. As you know, we are using a Zoom meeting platform. Ann will provide about a 5-minute overview of her society and her role, as well as her own personal journey as the sister of a brother on the spectrum. I will ask questions, but as audience members, please feel free to ask questions along the way by using the chat feature to the right of your screen. Once we are finished our discussion, we will open up the floor for questions from the audience, and they will be answered in the order in which they were received in the chat. Are there any questions before we begin? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and give it a speaker view, and I'm going to share my screen so that I can start with your presentation.
Thank you. Do you want me to go ahead and jump into the summary about the organization?
Yeah, we can go to the second slide.
Okay. So I am, as Renee shared, the Executive Director of the Autism Society of Central Virginia. I am, our organization is an affiliate of the Autism Society of America. There are affiliates across the country and across the state. There's one actually located in Tidewater, covering the Hampton Roads area, and then another one in Northern Virginia. So we're one of 3 affiliates who work very closely together with the other 2 affiliates, and we in this new virtual world, we actually serve individuals, not just in the greater Richmond area where I'm located, but really we have participants coming to us from all over the country, which is really neat. Our organization was founded about 30 years ago, really by parents who were looking for a support network. They were feeling alone and really wanted to join together and provide each other with the support, resources, recreational programs, education, and advocacy. So that's what we were founded on 30 years ago, and that's what we still are kind of pride ourselves in, having these strong programs to provide these those kind of key pillars of our mission. So we really are one of the premier sources of education, advocacy, services, and support for individuals with autism and their families, friends, their whole network, as well as professionals. You can go to the next slide. To carry out our mission, we provide an array of support services. So, and they're across the spectrum of autism, which I'll share in a little bit, and the entire age range. So it could be young children and their caregivers to adults with autism. So we are very thoughtful about how we structure our programs to be able to support the entire spectrum and lifespan. So we have an array of social, recreational, and support programming. So we have 7 different support groups that are running, and they're all virtual now. We have shifted everything we do to virtual at the moment, or most everything we do. But we do, gymnastics and martial arts for individuals with autism. We do a weekly teen social group, an adult social group. We do 7 different caregiver support groups, a grandparents group, a sibling group, and those all meet regularly. Then we also do an array of educational workshops. It could be workshops like me speaking today to different groups, or it could be, we have series of speakers that we bring in and host those regularly. Then we do information and referral, which is individual one-on-one consultation. And this is all free of charge, just to connect families who are feeling lost and they're looking for resources. So we can help with anything, whether it's, I'm looking for a therapy group, or I don't know where to start. My son just got a diagnosis, or it could be someone looking for a dentist who specializes in autism. So we see a array of questions coming to us. We also have a scholarship and financial assistance programs where there's quite a few different kinds that we offer, but post-COVID, we started a program that's just for essential items and groceries to support families that are really experiencing financial hardships right now. So we gave out about $20,000 in funds to the community last year just to support them through the challenging time. And part of that included holiday gifts. So we did a collection for holiday gifts for kids, which was really rewarding. And then we're really involved in advocacy initiatives across the state and also on the federal level. So making sure that our individuals and their families have access to services that are really important for them to thrive. So that's the organization in a nutshell. Sorry.
Can you tell us a little bit about your relationship with your brother?
Yes. So I joined the organization about 3 years ago in my role, and my brother was really my passion for getting involved. I had been part of the organization in different roles as a volunteer. My mom was on the board back in the day. So it's neat to kind of, I was always part of the Autism Society family, but it's really neat to be in that role in honor of my brother. He is 30. He is my younger brother. I always had kind of a motherly role to him, and I'm a caregiver for him now. He's pretty significantly impacted with he's a complex guy. He operates at about a 3-year-old level. He is verbal, but he is in his own happy world. He's a real happy guy, and just is a joy and really inspiration to me. But we've experienced all the different transitions throughout the lifespan. So, being young children together and a lot of the complexities that came with that, from explaining to my friends that my brother was different, or, having therapists in our life all the time, going to therapy appointments every day after school, to the transition period and joining adulthood, to now really overseeing his day-to-day care. So it's been a huge part of my life personally, and my passion is to help other families navigate it.
Thank you, Ann. Thank you for your very compelling story. So we have a few questions, or at least I have a few questions that I wanted to ask before we opened it up for questions from the audience. So my first question is, say that we were in an elevator. Okay, and so in about as long as it takes, maybe with a few stops on the way, to get from the ground floor to the 16th floor of a high rise, if someone asked you what autism is, how would you respond?
Yes, so it is and I have a slide for this, kind of to help, because it's hard to summarize it. They say when you meet one person with autism, you meet one person with autism, because it really impacts everybody differently, and it is a spectrum. So there's a full range of really needs and talents and abilities and challenges too. So I would describe it as a lifelong developmental disability that affects an individual's ability to communicate, interpret language, and interact with others. So that would be like the definition I would use. It now impacts 1 in 54 children. Boys are a lot more likely to get autism than girls, and it actually looks different between girls and boys. Some of the traits can be different, and it is people are typically diagnosed as young children. You might start seeing signs around 2 years old, but then there might be individuals who are diagnosed in their teen years, and now we're even seeing adults being diagnosed. We see it in all racial, ethnic, socioeconomic backgrounds. Autism does not discriminate. And we pride ourselves in supporting anyone and everyone on their journey. And I believe I have some of the here's my, sorry, I forgot about this slide. I covered this a little bit, but basically just pointing out the uniqueness of individuals and how everyone across the spectrum is different and has their own talents and challenges.
Thank you. Okay, so in recent years, and even in the last few months, there has been a change in the language which refers to those on the spectrum. Terms like neurodiversity and autism acceptance are now a part of the lexicon, and there have been changing opinions about what's wrong with the puzzle piece as representation of those on the spectrum. For example, I was reading that to autistic people, the puzzle piece represents negativity about autism, not a positive perspective of autism. A second issue for autistic people is that the puzzle piece also represents viewing us, they say, as puzzling or a mystery, often terms used in the past referring to autism. A relatively new symbol for autism has emerged. The butterfly has been suggested as a replacement for the puzzle piece, as it inspires thoughts of change and symbolizes the beauty of diversity and continued development. So could you please speak to the ever-evolving language, making sure that we stay up to date, especially as we now enter Autism Acceptance Month?
Yes, yes. I would love to. And I believe that I have some of the details on the next slide down. So April is Autism Acceptance Month, and it's historically, since the 1970s, been widely known as Autism Awareness Month, which is a month dedicated to empowering autistic individuals and their families. But this year, the Autism Society of America, along with a lot of the other leading disability organizations across the country, has shifted their language to really match the growing need for acceptance within our communities. So that's why we're renaming this month to Autism Acceptance Month. We will always take meaningful action to spread awareness. We see that that's really important, but the purpose is to aim beyond awareness and strive for full acceptance and inclusion within the community. So if you think about, have you kind of admitted individuals with autism into your close circles, into your group, into your schools, your workplace, your home, your social circle? So until you do that, you really haven't conquered acceptance. So that's the goal behind it. We really take this month as a way to share stories, resources, educate others about autism and the issues within the community, and really drive home that importance of acceptance. So that's why we've shifted to Acceptance Month. I will say, you brought up neurodiversity. So that is definitely a recent movement. And that was really started by individuals on the autism spectrum. And it's a framework that really takes the stance of it's against viewing autism and as well as other neurodevelopmental disorders. So that would include like ADHD, dyslexia, as needing a medical intervention or a cure or a fix, and instead promoting support systems. So inclusion-focused services, accommodations, communication, assisted technology, occupational therapy, support and independent living. So really the intention is for individuals to receive support that honors authentic forms of human diversity rather than focusing on deficits. So that's kind of a summary of the neurodiversity movement. And then you mentioned the puzzle piece. The puzzle piece there's a lot of different theories about the puzzle piece. For a lot of individuals with autism, it represents negativity, and as Renee pointed out, puzzling. We don't want to be known as puzzling. Also, there is a saying like find the missing piece, and it's like, no, there's nothing missing. There's nothing missing. So I think that's why we're starting to get away from using the puzzle piece. I've also seen more recently that the neurodiversity movement has included a rainbow infinity symbol replacing the puzzle piece. So you might start seeing that. I will say that we're really careful with what we use because self-advocates or individuals with autism might assume that we haven't taken their perspective into account as we are promoting awareness. So we're really mindful of that. The other couple items I wanted to point out is, some individuals prefer person-first language. So individual with autism, and then identity-first language, so autistic person. We use the two interchangeably because there are a lot of opinions and different theories on which to say. And we've actually done a poll nationally on what individuals prefer, and it really is, there's not one way or the other that is really coming to light. So my biggest recommendation is to really incorporate individuals with autism into your conversations and follow their lead, pay attention, ask for their preferences. Don't be shy. They'd much rather you ask than to assume. So. Hopefully that answered the question. That was a lot of information.
It really did. Thank you so much. So, coming from a personal perspective, what are some of the things that families with children or adults on the spectrum wish that we knew?
Yes, so I put together, I always love sharing the perspective of our families. So I put together some quotes from you all, from our families across the lifespan and in the spectrum. This is one family. They have a daughter named Joy, who is just an incredible young lady who's growing up way too quickly. But you can read her quote here, but I just thought it's really powerful to hear, we accept her for exactly who she is and how important it is for this family to promote acceptance and raise awareness around autism. So this was one. And then this is a young man named Cameron who is now in culinary school and loving it. This was a quote from his mother, and it's really sharing how, really the community at large is focused on children, and we really need to start thinking about adults. And everybody grows up. Autism does not go away. So, what can we do as a society to better support adults? So this is what that one's all about. And then the next one is, this is a family, just more about acceptance. And this young man has two siblings who just love him dearly. I've gotten to know the whole family really well. And, it's not about what the disability looks like. Just kind of being careful and being taking pride in who you are. And then the last one is a family who actually has 3 boys with autism, and they impress me every day with how they're out and about in the community. They're advocating for their children down at the General Assembly every year, and they're just part of the community. And they just, like yesterday, I met up with them at a park over spring break, and it's just neat to see them out in the community. And I love how they said down at the bottom about how they're lucky to live in an inclusive city like RVA. So they really feel appreciated and loved in the community. So wanted to be sure to share some of the faces of the families that we serve.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that information. So approximately 48% of children diagnosed with autism have been reported to elope. Elopement, they mention, is something that increases the risk of death for individuals with autism at twice the rate of the general population. Most children who wander or elope do so either from their home or someone else's home, stores, or schools. But when many people think of elopement, we get an entirely different picture. So can you talk about wandering and elopement a little bit, and possible strategies to assist the caregiver?
Sure. Yes. So elopement is really the tendency of an individual to try to leave the safety of a responsible person's care or their safe area, where it could result in potential harm or injury. So this could be running off from adults at schools, leaving the classroom without permission, leaving a house when the family's not looking. And really, it's a behavior that's considered common and short-lived in toddlers, but individuals with autism continue to elope as they get older, which can be quite scary. And a lot of individuals with autism really aren't aware of their surroundings, and they don't know what risks are out there and what danger they could be put in. So, the reasons why an individual might wander is really just simple joy of running around and exploring. and, going to a place that they love. So, if they love the park, they might just take off for the park. They might be trying to escape an anxious situation. So, if they're having really high demands at school, they might just leave the classroom. If they have an interest, like say they love trains, they want to go to the train tracks and they just head on to the train tracks. Same with water, which is really terrifying. Drowning is unfortunately quite common. And it's just this fascination of water and not knowing what's dangerous. So those are some of the reasons for that an individual might elope. And then I think some of the strategies that we share with our families to decrease elopement would be like securing your home. We have families who install a big fence around their home, additional locks, a home security system or door alarms. Some of our families have like ID bracelets. Some of them have tracking devices, like Project Lifesaver is one that we have locally, where it tracks with the GPS and you can look up where the individual is. Families have, wandering emergency plans. They've shared this with their neighbors. They've gotten to know the first responders in their area. So just making sure that the community is aware of that. Yes, and if they see the individual out wandering the streets alone, that they're on alert and can help them get to safety. And then just teaching the child safety skills and kind of having therapists and parents really work on developing those skills and sharing, what's safe, what's not safe, and using your words. If you want to go to the park, you ask to go to the park, and you don't just go to the park on your own. So
okay,
those would be the strategies that I would suggest.
thank you. Okay, those are some good strategies. And a lot of times too, children and adults with autism may display what they call stimming behavior. When you bite your nails or tap your pencil or twirl your hair, you're engaging in a behavioral pattern called stimming. And so this behavior with children of autism could include flapping their hands up and down, or pacing in circles, or rocking back and forth, spinning their entire bodies. So autistic stimming can be a hindrance in some perceptions because it prohibits the child from interacting with his or her peers. Can you talk a little bit about stimming and its impact on social interaction?
Sure. Yes. A lot of times stimming is really seen as like a self-soothing behavior. It could be because they're overstimulated, and stimming can help block that excess like sensory input. So if it's too bright or too loud, or even understimulation. My brother starts rocking just if he's bored or just not feeling well. He'll start rocking and beating his chest, and sometimes he'll have tics too. I can tell when he's really anxious because he'll start having tics with his face and different expressions he makes. Sometimes they're because they're in pain. So I wouldn't necessarily say like to try to, you want to support them through it, not necessarily make it go away, because it's helpful to them. It's their way of self-soothing. So I think just, making sure that they can manage their emotions and giving them other strategies and techniques. Some of our kiddos love like fidget spinners and the different fidget toys, and focusing on those, and then just finding ways that they can relax, because sometimes stimming is their way of relaxing, and it it doesn't look relaxing to us, but it's relaxing to them. So okay. I mean, my brother would spin all around the room, and I'm just like, how are you not falling over? But it's to help him with his balance. So it's different than what I would expect, but those are my thoughts around stimming.
Okay, thank you. So we didn't talk a little bit about it. I know that you did have a slide on characteristics, and I wanted to talk about some of the characteristics of children on the spectrum. They say that they have difficulty with verbal instructions. If they can read, it's easier if you write things down, or they have problems with decoding social cues. Some display repetitive behavioral patterns, or some have actual sensory issues. They don't really feel the cold, or it doesn't seem to, they don't have the same reactions as others in terms of their sensory issues, or in times, there are times maybe of stress that, if they are verbal, they make inappropriate or mean comments, and it's mean to us, no filter to us, but yet each is very unique with different strengths and different weaknesses and special interests. And of course, we know that all need love and encouragement. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, and you covered a lot of it. I was thinking it's really the the combination of social communication and behaviors. And then in addition to that, I would say there's a lot of co-occurring conditions and disorders that could be like a lot of our kiddos will have seizure disorders, or sensory processing difficulties, gastrointestinal disorders. And we already mentioned, so sensory, the behavioral elements, and a lot of the behavioral elements are brought on by frustration of not being able to communicate. So, and it's different across the spectrum. So, from the communication standpoint, there are individuals with autism who are nonverbal and they cannot communicate verbally, but we've found that with assisted technology, they can speak through a computer, or they've learned ways to communicate, and it's non-verbally, and it's really helped them to be able to interact with others in their lives. Also on the communication, in the communication category, sometimes we'll see like different tones of voice, different volume levels. My brother talks very loudly. Repetition, repeating certain phrases. We have kids that memorize full movies and they script, but they can't have a conversation, but they can tell you recite an entire Disney movie. So it's fascinating. I have a young lady who has a calendar in her mind. She's brilliant. And she can tell you, what day of the week any date is from going way back. It's really, really fascinating how the mind works and how brilliant these individuals are. It's just about getting it out there, helping them to communicate, and then same with the social aspect is difficult. They'll avoid eye contact, just have trouble relating, engaging, feeling empathy towards others, playing games, playing appropriate play, and sharing and forming friendships. But I say all of this, and I don't want to stereotype, because it's so different with every individual. So one individual might have a combination of 3 of the things I just mentioned and none of the others. Or, say my brother is, technically you would define him as on the severe, low end of the spectrum. And some individuals refer to that as nonverbal. He's very verbal. He talks nonstop. So it's really tricky. You can't define it. It's hard to quantify, but that's some of the characteristics that I'll share.
Okay. So I know that you talked about your brother, and we have to always remember, as you mentioned earlier in your conversation, you were saying that, these children grow up to be adults with autism. And can you talk a little bit about the resources that may be available, like SSI, Supplemental Security Income? I know that individuals with autism may be eligible to receive SSI to help support them financially? And what kind of things could we even take a look at as far as resources for adults on the spectrum?
Yes, and I'm very passionate about adult resources. I will be frank that I wish there were more. I think there's it's a new thing for our community because autism has gotten so much more prevalent. So we are down at the General Assembly constantly advocating for more adult services. So one big piece of the biggest way the government supports is through the Developmental Disabilities Waiver, which is covered by Medicaid. Unfortunately, the wait list to receive a waiver is now up to about 12,000 individuals. So we're always fighting for more waiver slots. And what that gets families is access to group home care. So it could be residential living in the different structures we see as either group homes. One new one is called sponsored residential, which is where an individual might live with a couple or, and that couple receives funding to care for them. There's quite a few different models and families are getting creative with it because there's not enough service providers that are providing adult services right now. We're seeing more and more group homes, but that's just one option of many. And it's not the only option for families. So I think the waiver is a big one. That could also cover day support programs. There's other services that it covers, like community coaching and helping, like job coaching. And speaking of that, another one would be there's different organizations that help individuals find jobs. So we're seeing more and more of that, which is really encouraging. We're seeing more companies hire individuals with autism. We see a lot more efforts in diversity, equity, and inclusion, which includes individuals with disabilities, which is really, really neat to see. And I'm trying to think, yes, SSI, so applying for Social Security income when the individual turns 18, I think that's really important. And just, I actually have an individual on my team who specializes in supporting families when their loved one is turning 18 to make sure that they get access to all the services that they could. So I think those are the main ones.
That's really good and very helpful information. So my last question, or actually it's really a comment in the discussion. I remember when I was so excited about my granddaughter, who is also on the spectrum. I remember I was really excited about her becoming an acolyte. After all, she would make the third generation of women acolytes in our family. But we quickly realized that, through her processing delays, she was having difficulty remembering some of the responsibilities, handling verbal instructions. And after a short amount of time, she became frustrated. She was disinterested. But there is ritual and universality and comfort of the same spiritual language week after week in the Episcopal Church and in other faiths. And she studied and she was confirmed in the Diocese of Washington 2 years ago. And she still enjoys our worship service, and she absolutely loves giving the peace. So my final question relates to autism and spirituality. I don't know whether you have any thoughts on that. Could you speak a little bit to how our churches can be welcoming spaces for families with autism, families with children and adults on the spectrum, and maybe how you have cultivated your own brother's spirituality. If you have any comments about that.
Yes. So I think it's, back to what I shared earlier about it needs to be individualized. And you want to make sure you don't assume that just because one accommodation you make works for one person, it might be completely different for another. So I always recommend groups to form like focus groups and collect feedback and try to understand like really what the individuals want. It was really important to my family growing up to go to church each week, and I grew up in the Episcopal church too. And they worked really hard to include him in Sunday school. And I don't know if this is it worked for us, but I know it wouldn't work for everybody. But they assigned a mentor to be with him during Sunday school, and that person would go with him and sit in and engage him with the other children. And if he got overstimulated or he wanted to do something else, they would take him out. And we were so grateful for that, because it allowed my parents time to go to the adult session. And that was really their only respite for the week too. So we were really grateful for that. But I think including the individuals in as many ways as you can, trying to make sure that the parishioners are educated and they know how to have positive interactions and they embrace the individual and their families. I think that's what's most important, is to create a culture that's inclusive and that the individual feels welcome. And then if there's other modifications that you want to put in place, like to help with kind of the sensory elements, noise is tough. So I know my brother had a really hard time sitting in the sanctuary because it was echoey, and it was tough for him. And he heard every little noise, but not the person speaking. And so he would act out in church and we'd have to leave. So I think just taking all of that into account and being mindful of just the different individuals and different needs. And we're here to help. I have wonderful people on my team who have done trainings before on how to put some of those accommodations in place. And we're always happy to help.
That's a wonderful part about the Diocese of Southern Virginia. We literally cut the bottom of the state. We go from the Eastern Shore all the way to Danville. And so you are within our servicing areas. And we do have parishes that would go to Central Virginia, the Autism Society. So thank you for...
Oh, and everything's virtual, so we can go anywhere nowadays.
Exactly. So I just want to, I really appreciate what you have shared with us today. And now I'd like to take this opportunity to open the floor up for questions. And I'm going to see if we have any questions in the chat. I see, I think we do have a question in the chat. And the question in the chat, it's a long one, so I'm still scrolling up. All
From Mary,
right.
save a grandson, 17-year-old with autism.
You want to read it for us? Or I can read it. Okay.
Either way.
It's my grandson is 17. And actually, they live in Northwest Virginia, so they are in the state. And an additional question would be, do you have offices up there in Loudoun County? But as he's getting older and further along in high school, they're now, he's not doing their 3 R's, so to speak. He's learning life skills, and of course, preparing him to have a life after high school. And my son has mentioned that that they're beginning to have ideas that he may very well eventually be able to live outside their home. And and they don't really know what that would look like. I mean, assuming a group home or something of that nature. But, and you addressed this a little bit, but are there group homes that really focus on the needs of people with autism who themselves are not necessarily understanding of other developmental disabilities? Are there homes that are sort of separate for autistic people, or are there? How do group homes work? About what are their limitations, or how open are they to who they take?
Yeah, so there are quite a lot of different group home providers. And so different providers have different focuses, and there are definitely more that like serve, say, individuals with higher level support needs, or, you know, more independent individuals. And I don't think that group homes, I mean, it's one option, but I see more options coming along. And I think it's all about finding the right fit. I mean, from a personal perspective, we have not been able to find a group home for my brother. One of the issues is there's not enough funding right now. So there's not enough, the group homes aren't able to have staff that can accommodate his needs, which is a big issue in the community right now. So we have put together our own structure for him and hire support for him around the clock through his waiver, but I've seen people do it on their own. But families have gotten creative. Families have come together, and, you know, they might have 3 individuals living together and hire somebody to be there. I also have individuals who are thriving in their own apartments with people who come and check on them a couple times a day. So there's a lot of different structures, and I think it's just getting creative with it. And I'm feeling really hopeful that as we get, as more and more people enter adulthood, there's more services in place.
Could I raise another issue? Would it be okay if I?
Yeah, and then we'll go on.
My son and daughter-in-law have they've been in they're already on the waivers list because they know it's going to take, you know, forever. They're just hoping that, you know, it'll work out by the time he gets old enough. But in order to get some of the therapeutic services that they've had for their son, they have had to accept the, I'm not sure the exact name of it. It's like a caregiver, you know, an on-site caregiver or assistant who would come and help him with his daily needs. And it's been a problem for them because he doesn't need help with getting dressed and that sort of thing. And he just needs someone to help him be a teenager at this point in time. Other times he needed somebody to help him be a 9-year-old, you know. And the people that tend to come into those positions they're really more attuned to elderly people who need help getting a bath, who need help, you know, getting their dinner cooked, or they need, you know, that kind of thing, getting their laundry done. And it's been really difficult for them to find someone who can really do what a young boy and a young man needs. And I hope that there's a way to advocate for more people to be involved in the assisting with children, you know, and I don't know how that word should go out, but there really is a need for that. Yeah.
And Mary, I'm going to put my email address in the chat. Reach out to me because there are some providers who specialize in supporting teens, and there's a couple different groups that I can link them to. It's one of the silver linings with this virtual world is there's more resources.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
No
They're in
matter
the Consumer Direct group. Is that the right word to say? That's who they're working through now, and they're finding their own people at this point, because
that's exactly what I do. But I do think that if he has access to, so he might have a behavioral specialist that, I mean, through either the waiver or insurance, that come in and help with different tasks. That's an option too. So
okay, yeah, that's great. Thank you so much.
More about it. And join our grandparents group. We have a wonderful grandparents group that meets monthly.
Okay.
All
right. Okay, that's good to know.
That's good to know. So the next question in the chat is, with the neurodiversity individuals, many are interrelated. How does Tourette's or tics, ADHD, and OCD relate to autism? My son has Tourette's and ADHD.
So I see a lot of it overlap in a lot of the individuals I know. I do not have the expertise to share how all the inner workings are. There's a lot of studies out of UVA, the UVA STAR program, and we actually had someone present on this recently, kind of the overlapping with ADHD and OCD, and there's actually a gentleman at VCU who has studied this as well, because we're finding that they do relate, and there's a lot of co-occurring diagnoses. I know, like, my brother is diagnosed with all of these officially: Tourette's, ADHD, OCD. So it's really fascinating to me. And I think there's a lot of research happening right now, because I think that this neurodiversity movement is bringing more awareness to that. And I'm hopeful that we'll know more within the next several years ahead. Yes, the drugs and treatments can, if for one, can often worsen the other. It's so complex. Yes, I agree with you. We're in the middle of that right now with my brother, and helping, side effects for different medications. And yeah, I couldn't agree more about that, unfortunately.
Right. And and she went on to say that, as a nurse, she was curious about all the relationships. Okay, so there was another question about the drugs and treatments, for one thing, can often worsen another. And so it gets so complex. And I know that that's true. You have this information, and you have all of these contraindications. One medication can produce a host of side effects. So there's some things that we all need to really find out about. And so I have another question from Nancy Smith. Is there a parent support group in Hampton Roads? When I'm thinking that maybe our first autism awareness and acceptance speaker, Mr. Diego Zuniga, the person that we had last fall, would be better able to answer that. And of course, Ann, I know that you all are all connected, so you would have information, but you were talking about a third Autism Society I think in Northern Virginia. Yes. So I know that all three of us offer support groups. I don't know which types of support groups they offer, but I can give you each of their websites that you can look at and see. I actually just pulled up Tidewaters to see, and it's not coming up. So I'll email you the link for Tidewater. I know we have a couple of different parent support groups that are virtual right now, and anyone can join us for them. We have ours are divided up by age. So we have one for parents of young children, parents of teens, and parents of adults. And then we have a dad's group and a grandparents group. And they're all meeting virtually right now, so you can join. Okay. So I just put the Tidewater affiliate in the chat, and then here's my website as well. Okay. Thank you so much, Ann. We really, really appreciate this very informative and insightful discussion as we learn more about autism spectrum disorder, including how we speak about it. That was really interesting information. Thank you to our audience for your attention, and please be mindful that we plan to continue our series at the annual fall meeting, which will be held in October. And if there are no further questions, Madam President Laura L. Manigault, would you please provide your closing remarks for this afternoon?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. On behalf of the Episcopal Church Women of the Diocese of Southern Virginia, we appreciate having you, Ms. Ann Flippen, the Executive Director, Autism Society of Central Virginia, as our keynote speaker, to participate in the President's Service Ministry Program. We have been enlightened and extremely motivated to learn more about the autism spectrum disorder and the challenges that involves all mankind. I also would like to thank Dr. Renee Escoffery-Torres, our moderator, and the diocesan community for your inspiration, motivation, support, talent, and funds provided to me for this project. We will have a fall session on October 15th, 2021 should be our last session. Lastly, I would like to let us pray. Oh God, you make us in your own image and redeemed us through Jesus, your Son. Look with compassion on the whole human family. Take away the arrogance and hatred which infect our hearts. Break down the walls that separate us. Unite us in bonds of love and work through our struggle and confusion to accomplish your purposes on earth. And in your good time, all nations and races may serve you in harmony around your heavenly throne. Through Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen.
Amen. All right.
Amen.
Well, thank you so much. And I'm going to stop the recording.